I remember the aroma of cinnamon rolls wafting through the house that morning. Mom had prepared them herself, something completely out of character. She never cooked, not even during holidays, but 2 weeks before my wedding day, she did. I should have sensed something was off right then. They waited until late afternoon. I was still in my loungewear when Dad summoned me to the living room. He couldn't even look me in the eyes. Mom stared down at her hands, her mouth drawn tight. The tension was palpable. Something serious had happened. I felt it in my gut. "Have a seat, Sophia," Dad said, his voice carrying that familiar coldness he used whenever I accidentally broke something as a child. I sat down, confused but trying to maintain composure. I'd learned years ago not to display emotion around them. It only made situations worse. Then they revealed it. "You were adopted," Mom stated bluntly. No emotion, no tears, just cold facts. "We took you in when you were 3, Dad added. "Your birth mother was incapable of caring for you. We did what we could." I sat frozen as they continued. "We think it's time," Mom went on, "that you know the truth before your wedding. You're starting a new life now." Then Dad reached beneath the coffee table and pulled out a small leather bag. "There are some documents in here and information about your biological family. We thought you might want to know before you marry James." They were telling me this 2 weeks before I was supposed to walk down the aisle. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I stood up slowly and nodded. "Thank you," I said with a slight smile. They didn't notice how tightly my fingers gripped the strap of the bag. They didn't catch the flash of something harder in my eyes. Because what they didn't know, what they couldn't possibly have guessed, was that 4 weeks earlier, I had found the letter. It was buried in the bottom drawer of the hallway cabinet behind old tax documents, an envelope addressed to a woman named Mariana Cortez. Inside was a birth certificate with my name and hers listed as mother. No father. I had researched her online. I'd even visited the library to read old newspaper articles, and what I discovered shocked me to my core. I hadn't spoken about it to anyone, not yet. My real mother hadn't been incapable, she had been taken away. And now, as I walked out of the living room clutching that leather bag, I didn't feel shattered. I felt prepared. Because I wasn't reacting with heartbreak, I was proceeding with purpose. The hotel room I retreated to smelled of artificial lavender and stale air, the kind of place people ended up when they needed to disappear temporarily. I kept my back against the wall that night, holding my bag as if it contained treasures. In truth, it only held the documents my parents had given me and that precious envelope, the envelope that was everything. The next morning, I slipped out before sunrise, the crisp air biting at my cheeks. I walked 30 minutes to the public library, my sanctuary. It was quiet there, safe, and they had the archives I needed. I sat at the microfilm station, inserted the reel I'd hidden in my locker the previous week, and studied the same faded article repeatedly, as if somehow the ending might change. Respected psychologist Mariana Cortez institutionalized after whistleblower claims backfire. The photograph beside the headline showed a young woman with intense eyes and delicate features being escorted away in handcuffs. Her expression wasn't fearful, it was defiant. According to the article, she had accused a prominent physician, Dr. William Hargrove, of abuse and unethical experimentation on female patients at a now-closed clinic. The doctor denied everything, of course. A month later, Mariana was declared mentally unstable and committed to Pinewood Psychiatric Facility for treatment and observation. No charges filed against the doctor. No follow-up investigations. Just silence. Except that same doctor later became the director of the Hargrove Wellness Foundation, a foundation my adoptive father had contributed to regularly. I'd remembered seeing the name on correspondence around the house, dismissed as charitable work. Now the connections were forming. I printed the article and tucked it into my envelope. The librarian gave me an odd look, perhaps because my hands were trembling. Back at the hotel, I opened my notebook and documented everything I knew. Mariana was a practicing psychologist. She was institutionalized after attempting to expose a powerful man. She gave birth to me during that period. Somehow, I ended up in the care of a couple connected to that same man. This wasn't coincidence. That night's sleep evaded me. The shadows on the ceiling seemed too alive, too watchful. I kept thinking about her, Mariana. Did she know I existed out here? Was she even still alive? I needed answers. I needed to see her, speak with her if possible. But first, I had to discover where Pinewood Psychiatric Facility was now, if it even still existed. The next morning, I began calling public records offices, mental health departments, anyone who might know where former patients were transferred after Pinewood closed. Most had never heard of it, but one clerk, an older woman with a gentle voice, hesitated when I asked. She promised to call me back. 2 hours later, she did. There's a long-term care facility in Mapleton, about 3 hours east. Some of the Pinewood patients were quietly moved there in the early 2000s. No public record exists, but I can tell you that some residents are still there. I didn't ask how she knew. I simply wrote down the name, Evergreen Center for Behavioral Health. I had a destination now, but no transportation, limited funds, and no idea what awaited me. I hadn't eaten properly in a day, not because I couldn't, but because I needed to conserve money. The bills my adoptive parents had given me had mostly gone toward hotel fees and printing records. Every dollar mattered now. I sat on a bench near the library with my notebook open, calculating bus fare to Mapleton. It wasn't much, but with my dwindling resources, it might as well have been a plane ticket. I didn't want to steal. I didn't want to beg. But I desperately wanted answers. The cafe across the street had a "Help Wanted" sign in the window. I hesitated, then crossed over. I asked for the manager and told him I'd wash dishes, clean tables, anything. He looked me up and down, noticed the dark circles under my eyes, then said, "You start tomorrow, 7 a.m." I worked for 6 days straight, barely speaking to anyone. My back ached, my hands cracked from harsh soap and hot water, but on the 7th morning, I collected $143 in wages and tips. It was enough. The bus to Mapleton departed at 9:15 a.m. I didn't say goodbye to anyone. I simply walked to the terminal, secured the envelope with Mariana's article inside my jacket, and boarded. The journey was quiet, passing through towns that seemed nearly abandoned, their streets still showing signs of winter though it was already May. Evergreen Center stood atop a long hill, partially concealed by trees. The sign was weathered, the paint peeling. It resembled an abandoned manor more than a healthcare facility. The receptionist barely glanced up when I entered. She had a clipboard, glasses perched low on her nose, and a weary voice. "I'm here to visit a patient," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Name?" she asked. "Mariana Cortez." She blinked. "Relation?" I paused. "I'm her daughter." She studied me for a moment. "She doesn't receive visitors." "I know. That's why I'm here." She picked up the phone, dialed an internal extension, murmured something too quiet to hear, then nodded at me. "Down the corridor, 3rd door on the left. Keep it brief." The door creaked open like something from a dream, and there she was, thin, pale, hair streaked with gray, sitting beside a window, her hands neatly folded in her lap. She didn't turn when I entered. "Mariana?" I said, my voice quivering. She looked up slowly. Her eyes met mine, and for just an instant, something flickered in them: recognition, pain, perhaps both. She didn't speak, but she didn't look away either. I stepped closer, heart pounding. "My name is Sophia. You had a daughter almost 30 years ago. They told me you were unfit. They said you were dangerous. But I read what happened. I know what you tried to do. I know what they did to you." She exhaled softly, and something in her posture shifted. Her hands tightened. "They still monitor me," she whispered, almost inaudibly. "They think I don't remember, but I do." I froze. She remembered. But who was they? Mariana's eyes darted toward the door, then to the corners of the ceiling. There were no visible cameras, but she stared as if she knew exactly where they had once been. Her voice was barely a breath when she continued. They recorded our therapy sessions, claimed it was for research. But it wasn't. It was to control us, to build profiles. I saw things, heard things I shouldn't have. She paused, gripping her wrist with her opposite hand as if restraining herself. Mariana, I began, moving closer. Who's they? Is it the Hargrove Foundation? My father. She blinked rapidly, the name seeming to trigger a physical reaction. She shook her head slowly, not as a denial, but more like rejection born of fear. Your father, she whispered, her eyes avoiding mine. He wasn't supposed to adopt you. He wasn't even on the approved list. But he pulled strings, had your file sealed. I tried to prevent it, but by then they had already decided I was too vocal, too dangerous. My knees weakened. I lowered myself into the chair beside her, struggling to keep my voice even. What were they doing, Mariana? What did Hargrove do to those women? She bit her lip until it whitened. Experimental therapy. Isolation techniques. Memory suppression trials. It began under the pretense of PTSD treatments, but it evolved. They tested drugs, behavioral manipulation on women no one would miss. Some were addicts, some were just inconvenient wives. And you? I asked. I was documenting everything. I was young, idealistic. I thought ethics mattered. I submitted evidence to the state board. A week later, I was suspended, then arrested, then this place. Her voice cracked and her eyes welled up. She hadn't cried in years. I could tell she'd conditioned herself not to. I pleaded with them to let me see you when they told me you'd been placed. I didn't know where or with whom. They transferred me here, claimed I was a danger to myself. I never stopped wondering. I reached into my bag and removed the envelope. You don't have to wonder anymore. She touched the folded papers as if they might disintegrate at her touch. For a long moment, she remained silent. Then, you shouldn't be here. If they discover you found me. I don't care, I interrupted, more firmly now. You're not insane. You never were. And I'm going to prove it. Mariana's hand shot out, gripping mine with unexpected strength. Trust no one with credentials or uniform. Not in this world. Suddenly, footsteps echoed down the hallway. Mariana's entire body tensed. A shadow passed the door. She sat up straighter, eyes vacant, posture perfect. The nurse opened the door, smiling thinly. I'm sorry, visiting hours are over. Mariana didn't look at me again. She simply folded her hands and turned toward the window. As I stood, my heart racing, the nurse leaned in slightly and whispered, You're not the first to come asking about her. But the last woman never returned. She closed the door behind me before I could respond. The chill hit me like a physical blow when I stepped outside Evergreen. My breath clouded the air, and my fingertips trembled not just from the cold, but from everything I'd just learned. My mother wasn't a patient. She was a prisoner. I didn't immediately return to the bus stop. I found a bench beneath a bare maple tree and sat there, staring at the faded sign of the facility up the hill. My thoughts raced. Another woman had come before me. Someone else had tried to uncover the truth, and she had vanished. The nurse hadn't expressed it as a threat, but it certainly felt like one. Back in Mapleton, I checked into a cheap motel with peeling wallpaper and a key that barely worked. Sleep wouldn't come. I spent the night searching online forums, archived databases, even Reddit threads for anything about Evergreen, Pinewood, or patients who had disappeared without explanation. Nothing. It was as if their history had been completely erased. I shifted my focus to the Hargrove Foundation. That name had haunted me since seeing it on the donation letters in my adoptive father's study. Their website was polished, filled with smiling faces, wellness retreats, and carefully crafted mission statements about holistic healing for women in crisis. A lie, a facade. I began digging through nonprofit filings and tax documents, anything publicly available. And then I saw it, a name buried in the administrative paperwork. Michael Davis. He had signed off on a foundation acquisition of patient care research materials during the year Pinewood was shut down. My stomach dropped because that's my adoptive father's real name. He was never just a contributor. He was an insider, a director, one of the inner circle. He helped Hargrove conceal everything. He may have even assisted in having Mariana committed. And then he took me. I was never a gift, never a charitable act. I was a trophy from their success, proof that their system worked, that they could destroy someone's life and raise their child as if nothing had happened. Rage coursed through me, but beneath it lurked a cold fear. They had power, influence. They'd eliminated others before. That nurse at Evergreen hadn't warned me out of kindness, she was telling me to run. But I wasn't running. I needed evidence. I searched public employee records for Evergreen and found a name, Nurse Rebecca Miles. I'd seen it on her badge. With some effort, I located her Facebook page, no posts, just likes and photos of her garden. But there was one clue, an old comment under a picture of a nursing conference. Someone had tagged her and written, "Still working nights at Evergreen?" Poor thing, that place gives me chills. I messaged her. I didn't anticipate a response, but I told her who I was, that I'd spoken with Mariana, and that I needed her help to expose what really happened. An hour passed, then two. Then at 2:14 a.m., a message appeared. Meet me at the rear entrance tomorrow night, 11:30. If anyone sees you, say you're lost. The wind cut sharply that night, slicing through my jacket as if it weren't there. Evergreen at 11:30 p.m. felt different, like the building itself was holding its breath. There were no vehicles in the parking lot, no voices, just silence and shadows stretching under the moonlight. I followed the gravel path around back, stepping over cracked stones and patches of frost. The door marked "Maintenance Only" opened before I could knock. Rebecca Miles stood inside, still in her scrubs, her expression tense and exhausted. Up close, she looked older than I expected, not in years, but in burden, as if she carried too many secrets for too long. "You came," she said. I nodded. I had to. She motioned me inside. "Keep your voice down. Some of the cameras are non-functional, but not all of them." We moved swiftly down a narrow service corridor lit by flickering bulbs. She led me through a small break room and into an old records office lined with filing cabinets. "I shouldn't be doing this," she whispered, unlocking the third drawer with a small brass key. "But I witnessed what they did to your mother and to the others. And when that last woman showed up, I thought maybe, just maybe, someone would finally listen." I froze. The other woman, what happened to her? Rebecca pulled a thick file from the cabinet and handed it to me. Her name was Valerie Thompson. Investigative journalist. Smart, persistent. She came asking questions about Mariana and others who had disappeared from Pinewood. She showed me court documents she'd uncovered, medical papers. She was close. What happened to her? She returned for a second visit. That night, her apartment was broken into, her laptop and files stolen. She told her colleague she felt like she was being followed. 3 days later, she vanished. Police classified it as a voluntary disappearance, but you don't believe that? No, Rebecca said softly. Valerie was frightened, but not the type to run. I opened Mariana's file, pages upon pages of notes, all stamped with red, unstable, delusional, paranoid. The language was clinical, cold, manipulated. She wasn't delusional, Rebecca said. She was perfectly rational the day before her commitment. She filed a complaint with the medical board. The next day, she's labeled a threat. I flipped to a photocopied report handwritten, signed, M. Cortez. It described unauthorized drug trials on patients without legal consent under Hargrove's direction. Why hasn't this come to light? I asked. Rebecca shook her head. The Foundation's reach is extensive. They fund hospitals, universities, even political campaigns. If you try to go through official channels, they'll make you disappear too. I'm not going through official channels, I said, folding the report and slipping it into my jacket. I'm going to demolish their empire from the outside. Rebecca hesitated, then reached into her own bag and handed me a flash drive. These are internal memos, scans of patient logs, Mariana's reports. If you're serious, you'll need this. I am. Then be smart and don't return here. As I left through the maintenance door, I realized something had changed. I wasn't just a bride searching for answers anymore. I was a threat. And I wasn't afraid, not yet. I didn't return to the motel. I didn't go anywhere associated with my name. Instead, I spent the night in a corner booth of a 24-hour diner 2 towns away, nursing a coffee I could barely afford and staring at the flash drive in my palm as if it were explosive. I had no laptop, just my phone. I couldn't risk connecting the drive to anything traceable. By noon, I found a second-hand electronics shop, paid cash for a worn Chromebook, and took it to a public library. I sat in the back, behind shelves of forgotten encyclopedias, and plugged in the flash drive. It took 3 minutes to load. Then the folder names appeared: patient logs, experimental treatment notes, foundation memos, Dr. W.H. Private, transfer records, M. Cortez. My throat constricted. I opened the patient log's first pages of cold clinical notes, coded references to sedation trials, regression therapy, behavioral compliance sessions. Some notes concluded with subject transferred to long-term containment after non-compliance. No names, just numbers. Next were the foundation memos. Many bore Michael Davis's digital signature. Patient MC remains a reputational liability. Recommend continued confinement and status quo. Possible media exposure in 2015 flagged and handled. Internal report by Thompson suggests security breach. Monitor and escalate. Valerie's name. They knew she was investigating. They watched her. They let her get close, then they erased her. My hands shook as I opened the folder labeled Dr. W.H. Private. Video files, dozens, no titles, just dates. I clicked one from 2007. A dim room. A woman strapped to a chair. Slurred speech. A man off-screen asking calm, leading questions. Do you believe we're here to harm you, Mariana? A familiar voice, cold, smooth. Hargrove. No, she murmured. You're helping me. Helping me forget. I slammed the lid shut. It wasn't therapy. It was programming. I needed to move quickly. I reached out to every independent journalist I could locate: Reddit threads, anonymous leak forums. I even sent the complete contents of the drive to a burner email linked to a podcast I once heard about whistleblowers. Most didn't reply, but one name caught my attention: Amanda Lewis, former investigative reporter, dismissed years ago for pursuing a story on unethical psychiatric treatment in state-run facilities. Rumor had it she continued investigating even off the record. I sent her a message. I have evidence of state-sanctioned experiments on women. I have names, videos, and I believe a woman named Valerie Thompson tried to contact you once. She disappeared. Please help me. I expected silence, but an hour later, she responded, Where are you? I've been waiting for this for 12 years. Amanda Lewis didn't reside in a city. She lived in a small cabin on the edge of nowhere, 2 hours from the nearest convenience store and surrounded by pines thick as secrets. Her voice on the phone had been low, direct. No names, no license plates. Leave your phone in the glove box. I'll meet you outside. I followed every instruction. When I arrived, She was already waiting on the porch, early 50s, piercing eyes, weather-worn skin. She didn't smile. Inside, she moved efficiently. No welcome, no refreshments. She simply locked the door, pulled out a dusty laptop, and said, "Show me." I handed her the flash drive. She plugged it in, showing no reaction as she scrolled through the folders, only a slow, deliberate breath when she saw the name Valerie Thompson. "She contacted me once," Amanda murmured. "Told me she was frightened. Told me she thought she was being followed. I offered to meet. She vanished before we could." She paused, looked at me. "You're not just endangering your life. You're entering a war these people believe they've already won." "I know," I said, "but I'm not backing down." She opened one of the memos and nodded. "These are authentic. The language, the headers, this is how the Foundation communicates. You couldn't fabricate this." Then she clicked into the videos. Watched quietly, steadily, jaw clenched. "If these go public, someone burns," she said finally. "But we have to be strategic. One wrong move, and you disappear like Valerie, or worse, like Mariana. Alive but buried." She leaned closer, voice a whisper. "We need to make this too massive for them to contain. We approach trusted allies, former prosecutors, whistleblower networks. And when we release it everywhere simultaneously." I nodded, but deep inside, I knew we weren't just fighting for justice. We were fighting for Mariana, for Valerie, and for what remained of my own stolen life. Amanda worked swiftly. Within 24 hours, the flash drive had been duplicated 8 times and mailed to 8 individuals across the country: former prosecutors, human rights attorneys, 3 journalists, and an underground whistleblower platform. Each person received a separate password to unlock it, delivered via encrypted calls. "This is how you destroy a monster," Amanda said. "Deprive it of darkness." Meanwhile, she drafted a comprehensive report to accompany the evidence, connecting all the pieces. She worked through the night. I barely slept. But the next morning, I woke to a voicemail. It was from him, Michael Davis. His voice was measured, calm, the way it always had been. Controlled, as if he were already deciding what came next. "Sophia, I know what you've been doing. I want to talk. You owe me that much." I stared at the phone, my stomach nodding. I didn't owe him anything. Amanda looked up from her laptop. "Don't go." But I had to. I needed to face him one final time. We met in a public place, an old train station, half renovated. Cameras. Witnesses. I maintained my distance. He wore his usual navy blazer and fatherly smile, as if nothing had changed. "You've grown into a remarkable woman," he said. "Don't," I snapped. "Don't pretend you raised me out of love." His face flickered. "You think this was simple? You think I wanted this?" "No," I said. "I think you craved control." He paused, then gave a slight nod. "Everything you've found, it's dangerous. Not just for me, for you, for Mariana. If you release it, people will get hurt." "I know," I said, eyes locked on his. "And they already have." He stepped closer. "This doesn't have to end badly. You still have time to stop it." I didn't move. Then I said quietly, "It's already out." He went still. His expression changed, composure peeled away, revealing something colder beneath. "This will destroy you too," he said. "No," I whispered. "It liberates me." I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. The story broke 3 days later. It began with a podcast episode, raw, unfiltered audio from the videos I had recovered. Then came the articles, the documents, the scans of falsified patient files, whistleblower statements, an anonymous exposé on Valerie Thompson, naming names. And then the video, Mariana in that room, her voice slurred, her eyes empty. People watched. People listened. By the end of the week, Pinewood was trending. Within 2 weeks, the state attorney general announced a formal investigation. Subpoenas were issued. Michael Davis's name appeared alongside William Hargrove and 4 others in a class action lawsuit filed by former patients' families. I hadn't expected the world to care, but it did. Amanda kept me protected, hidden, while the media frenzy surged. But my thoughts never left Evergreen. I have to get her out, I told Amanda one morning, before they decide she's too dangerous to keep alive. Amanda made a call. By dusk, we were on the road. Evergreen didn't resist. After the leak, the staff were scared, uncertain. Some had already left. Nurse Rebecca met us at the door and handed over a clipboard. She's been sedated, but she's still lucid. You need to move quickly. I found her in the same chair by the window. Mom, I whispered, kneeling down. We're leaving. Mariana's eyes were glazed, but her hand moved slow but sure. She touched my cheek. You found me. I always would, I said, tears flowing freely. No matter what they did. We walked out together. No alarms, no orderlies, just twilight and wind. I never had that wedding. James understood why, though it took time. Some things are more important than white dresses and flower arrangements. Some things are about reclaiming what was stolen. The subsequent months were a whirlwind: legal protection, medical care, trauma therapy, Mariana's reintroduction to a world that had forgotten her. And the trial delayed but not dismissed. Michael Davis never called again. He was indicted 4 months later. And Valerie? Amanda never stopped searching. 8 months after the leak, a woman was discovered living under an assumed name in a small coastal town, nervous, guarded, but alive. Her name was Valerie Thompson. Today, 3 years later, we stand together, Mariana, Valerie, myself, and the dozens of other women who have since come forward. Our scars aren't just marks of what we endured, they're badges of what we overcame. The Hargrove Foundation has been dismantled, its assets frozen, its directors facing criminal charges. Michael Davis was sentenced to 15 years for conspiracy, fraud, and false imprisonment. But the most beautiful part? Mariana smiles, now real smiles that reach her eyes. She teaches part-time at a community college, sharing her story with psychology students. Never stop questioning, she tells them. Never stop fighting for what's right. Last week, I found her standing in my kitchen, making tea, humming softly to herself. The sunlight caught her face, highlighting the new softness there, the absence of fear. I never thought I'd have this again, she said when she noticed me watching. A normal life, a daughter, freedom. I took her hand, the same hand that had once been strapped to a chair, the same hand that had reached for me across decades of darkness. They tried to erase us, I said. But they forgot something important. What's that? She asked. The truth doesn't stay buried forever. And neither do we. We're not just survivors. We're revolutionaries. And our revolution has only just begun.